have our presenters today, Shelly Crack and Sherry Disney. So we are going to, again, be learning about the local food to school program on Haida Gwaii. So Shelly is of European descent and was raised on the Anishinaabe territory outside Thunder Bay in Ontario. She has been a registered dietitian with Northern Health on Haida Gwaii for 15 years with a focus on local food systems. Her mentors on Haida traditional food are Jenny Cross and Margaret Edgars, and she has been involved in local food to school for over 10 years and has 2 school-aged children, Freya and Huxley. And we're also going to be hearing from Sherry today. Sherry's family is from Haida Gwaii, and she has lived in Masset throughout her life. Her formal education is in human resource management. On Haida Gwaii, she has previously worked with credit unions and Northern Health. She now happily calls Haida Gwaii home full-time with her 2 sons. And she has just been through her orientation for the Learning Circle Coordinator position and is excited to be part of the team. So thank you so much to Sherry and Shelly. They're going to be doing the presentation from now on, and I'll put myself on mute. If anybody has any questions, please go to the chat. It's at the bottom of the screen. You can open the chat box and you can send questions as they come up, and then we'll answer them all at the end because it kind of flows a little bit better. And again, this webinar is being recorded right now, and you will be sent a link to the recording afterwards, and as well receive all the slides. So, all right, let's take it away.
Thank you so much for the introduction there. And yes, we will look forward to any of the questions that do come through. At the end, there's a slide that will prompt for us all to know that we're at the answer questions portion. But before we really get started, we just want to acknowledge first that myself, Sherry, and Shelly, we both live and work on Haida Gwaii, and we want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Haida.
And this is Shelly, and I think this first slide has is my picture, which has local food to school, a bit of a timeline. And I threw these pictures in this morning. So yeah, I just wanted to introduce you guys that we've been working in our local food world for over the last 10 years. And I think it's important to note that it's gone through so many different iterations. 10 years ago, we started partnering with this organization with a lot of salad bars focus, and we focused on, we have 8 schools on Haida Gwaii, and so we started with looking at schools and gardens and farmers. In 2014, we had Farm to Cafeteria Canada fund a Learning Circle Coordinator position that Sherry holds now. And so that position is now 6 years old in our community. After we created that position, we did a lot of community engagement, creating some visions and goals around food security, in which the Pantry concept emerged, and we'll touch on the Pantry. And from there, when we partnered with a CHIR grant and the University of Waterloo, we did a real focus on Indigenous health, and we did a focus on traditional foods of the island and not just farm foods, which is something that was a real change in direction for the program, and an important one for living here on the island. And that was still the same year that we had a Haida Foods Committee created. So XFC stands for Haida Foods Committee. And that's a group of Haida knowledge keepers that really oversee and guide the work that Sherry and I do and all of us do. And really, if I was to say where we're heading now, is really looking at an all-island food initiative around food sovereignty. And why I say that is that we've really expanded beyond schools, hospitals, and beyond. And I just want to say that the pictures kind of represent a lot of the work that we're involved in, and I think this concept is familiar to all of you. The first 2 slide pictures, the one at the top is our students from Chief Matthews School in Old Masset going out seaweed harvesting on the boat. pre-COVID, obviously, and they're out there harvesting seaweed with knowledge keepers. And then the other picture is a community workshop with fish, where Nani Margaret Eggers is in the picture teaching people how to can fish. And I just think about this out on the land and hands-on learning that happens, that's so important. And then the bottom two pictures kind of speaks to the food system part of the work that we do. One picture on the bottom left is a picture of our South End local food pantry, where it's full of processed berries, where we've bought berries and put them away for the year and to serve them throughout hospitals and health centers and schools through the year. And then you could also see all the deer hanging there, and we've created a lot of systems on the island where hunters can go out, get deer for our program, and then we process them and get them out to cooks and schools. And so I really want to highlight the importance and the value of the hands-on learning, the teaching aspect, the connecting youth and elders, getting out on the land and the water, alongside the food system, where we're putting food away and finding ways to get local and traditional food onto the plate of different food programs. So next slide.
And our next slide gives just a little bit of context of exactly where we are. I know every spot in the province has its own unique things to kind of work around and work with, and these are ours. One of them is our modes of transportation. You do have to take into account how you're going to get people and things to and from Haida Gwaii. So before COVID-19, there is air travel. However, that's on pause right now. There are seaplanes right now. They're at a limited schedule, and those go over to Prince Rupert. And we also have a ferry. Now, keeping all those modes of transportation in mind, they all have schedules, and it's not always every day, every of the week. And sometimes they get canceled due to weather. So we are constantly mindful of how resources could be reaching us, and how we could leave if we needed to. And the time that it takes to travel here is quite significant as well. The ferry, depending on which sailing you get, is anywhere between 6 to 8 hours to come across from Prince Rupert and to land on this side in the town of Skidegate. So it does affect our services. We do rely on the ferries and boats and barges to bring us a lot of resources and things. And in a time where we need to rely on emergency responders, again, keeping weather conditions and time in mind, it does take a little bit longer to get emergency responders to us. All of these factors are things to note, because the last slide that Shelly was speaking to, and the last point that's kind of overarching for this one as well, is the importance for the Haida communities to feel that there's an abundance of food and a security of knowing that we do produce enough on the island here to keep us fed for any amount of time that we may need to. So for just a little snapshot to further that to the population here, is at any given point in time, there are likely less than 5,000 people living across 7 smaller communities. So that's the population we're looking to have abundant, secure food sources for. And the climate here is rather temperate. So we do have a good grow season for a lot of things. And as we've discovered through some of the pictures, and we will through a few more as we go along, there are things that can be harvested that already occur here, whether it is a plant or an animal. And we also can grow a lot of things, whether inside a greenhouse or just in garden beds in our backyard. And that is ready for the next slide.
Yeah, this is a busy slide. I made this slide for another group just to highlight funders. The funders are listed on our left, and you can imagine that over 10 years, we've had a long list of funders that have really supported building what we have today. And I've sort of punched out in bold the funders that have supported the position that Sherry holds, which is a Learning Circle Coordinator position. And why I wanted to highlight that is because I think when funders fund strategic positions in community around food security, a lot can happen. And these are often 1 to 3 year funding sources instead of year to year. And what it has allowed in our community is for our that position to gather community members. So on the bottom right-hand corner is a learning circle that we held in Tallel, which is in the middle of our island about 4 years ago, where we have knowledge keepers, elders, food gatherers, a lot of school district folks. And we bring people together and we create visions and goals around food security together. And that's been so valuable. And then there's other grants that just help us pay for food for our schools. So like Maison Canada and Breakfast Club of Canada, things like that, where the funding comes through to support our school food system to buy local. And then we have other grantors that have built up our infrastructure on the island. So we have 2 pantries on the island, one in north and one in the south, where we hold community freezers and fridges, stoves in order to process and can up food. And so we're just looking at doing an upgrade on some of those facilities. And I do have to say, I have one of our funders punched out on top, which is Gwaii Trust. And then Haida Child and Family is a new funder for us at the bottom left. And both of those are local funders, and it's really nice to bring local funding partnerships together because it's a direct value for the community and it's ongoing. So Gwaii Trust Society has been a funder for our pantry coordinators for over 5 years standing. And I just want to say we have 2 positions on the island that are considered pantry coordinators, and through emergency funds this summer, we're trying to double that. And then on the right, we have our partnerships, which are just invaluable. And I would say the Council of the Haida Nation is a governing body for the island, and then the 2 band councils. We work with mayors and municipalities. School district's been a huge supporter of our work, and we focus a lot of our work on schools and children, but we also have these connections with food gatherers, elders, and knowledge keepers that really help guide the work, help us set direction and oversight. And really, they're the people that are often we're sourcing the food from. Farmers should be on there as well. And the last thing I just wanted to say, because I did reach out to Margaret, who's tiny in the blue sweater there, who is one of my mentors, and I just asked her, what is it important to relay on this call today, and she was just saying how important it is and how much the gardening on island has kicked up. So I just wanted to bring Margaret's words into this presentation. She sits on our Haida Foods Committee and has been a part of the work since the beginning. And I think it's a good transition to Sherry's next slide about what's been going on. So I'll pass it to you, Sherry.
So this next slide is a fun one to look at because this is what we're all doing this for. On the left-hand side there is an adult day program that exists down in Old Masset, and that is an example of one of the community gardens that has not only been started but is also thriving and doing very, very well. Another thing that exists at this site that you cannot see in this picture is a large greenhouse. So the greenhouse that exists at the ADP, the Adult Day Program, is storing the seedlings that are going out to people's gardens through the garden boxes, which is also the program that Margaret was talking about that's doing so well, and that is the location that it all starts from. So this was also with the CHN, the Council of the Haida Nation, and the Pantry coordinators' help. On the right-hand side, what we have is a picture of one of the gardens that is at Tehagen Elementary School, also in Masset. And this is a part of the after COVID-19 coming. We're finding ways for kids to be safe and outside and connected to schools and proper social distancing and making sure that they have the opportunity to do the hands-on learning that we also feel is a very important piece of the work that's happening here. And we'll go to the next slide. And my apologies, I've joined by phone, so I'm just making sure we're looking at seeds now. The seeds are another example of something that has gone out in the garden boxes out into the communities and into individuals' homes. And the seeds themselves were donated by the Vancouver Neighborhood Food Network. And a big thank you to Sarah Kim for that. So the grow kits and backyards were made possible through a number of partnerships, and that was a very notable one. And on the right-hand side, what you see there is gao, which is eggs that is connected to seaweed, if you did not already have that previous knowledge. And this is an important and delicious food for the communities. And this is an example of some of those foods, yes, going out in food boxes, but also what is super notable is that it's also going into the hospitals and being accessible to elders. And that's especially important to have foods that connect you to your culture and to your history and to your, and to make you feel comfortable while you're there, especially in a time when no family can visit. So previously, perhaps families could have been bringing these kinds of foods in to see their elders. And in our current situation with COVID-19, families are being discouraged from going into the hospital, or perhaps, not allowed, not permitted to visit. So this was a lovely thing to have available. And we'll go to the next slide. And this one, it has a picture from inside our high school. Our high school in Masset is called Gudne Kwatskane, GTNS. And Marjorie is there, and she is normally one of the food teachers, and kind of repurposing some time because there are not classrooms in session. She is helping currently in this photo prepare some scallops and get them ready for elders in the hospital again. And then she is also being very involved getting the foods together into the boxes. So food delivery is our first note here, but we have been focusing on getting emergency food programs the resources that they need. So our work has been to make sure that we're working with food banks and getting them everything that we can in schools, and the schools themselves are arranging for food box pickup. So there will be certain times, certain days, and families can sign up and self-identify, and the schools themselves too have been reaching out to offer it to families that they believe may want to access the program. So it's either way you can get onto the list. And so also during COVID-19, and this has been talked a little bit about already, but it honestly has taken off in a way that we, could hope have had to happen with all the garden kits and everything. As garden expansions are really going just in a wonderful way at schools and communities and in people's own backyard gardens. And that is also another notable thing that's happening, is that one of the high school teachers, again at GTNS, is accompanying the gardening kits with our Facebook page, and links, kind of showing links to how to tend your garden, how to take care of those seedlings. What do you do when you get them into the ground? What do they look like when they're ready? So all of these videos have kind of just started, and they will keep continuing to make them, and it's a wonderful way to support the success of gardens at home, and make sure that we're keeping all of the social distancing and having everything available for each person in their own garden is a really great way to add to our feelings of security. And our collaboration with the CHN is an ongoing thing. CHN, again, is the Council of the Haida Nation here, and they are working on food security plans, and they are interested in beginning a little bit more of a formal approach than what currently exists for food security for the island. But another notable thing that the CHN has done is they do have a number of employees who currently cannot fulfill their tasks doing field work and other types of work that they would normally be doing, and instead have been refocused to help some of the garden expansions and to help with food security and island food sovereignty. So they're still being employed, and they just have redirected the focus to help do this great work that we're currently in the middle of. So I think that was everything that I had for that slide, which brings us to the next one, which just wanted to say thank you for your attention. We do hope that there are a few questions out there that perhaps we can help share some good ideas, or maybe even something that stood out for you that is a success that you're having and that we would also love to hear about. So I will put myself on mute for a minute and see what comes in.
We have a Menti slide as well. So if you could go back to the menti.com and the same code 151914, you can type in what some of your takeaways were from the webinar, and you can add 3 different entries here. Just while we're sitting and thinking about any learnings that you've had or any ideas that it's inspired. It's always nice to hear about what other people are doing, I find. So again, you can type things in the chat box if you have any questions after you do your takeaway. It's always nice to see. So we have some about collaboration, caring for elders, food security, elevation, local and traditional food sustainable practices, all island, hands-on learning, respect, flourishing. It's a nice word. Yeah, I like that caring for elders piece. I feel like that's missing in a lot of programs across the province. It can be hard to integrate intergenerational gardening and cooking practices. Continuity. Kids harvesting seaweed. I know, that's so cool. You're being in Kamloops. We don't have any seaweed here. It's not something I think about. That's cool. Awesome. Well, I'll just leave this up in case anybody helps. Well, you know what? I don't know, but that boat picture is really pretty. What do you think, Shelly?
Either way. It's cool to see that word. Thanks for everyone's words. I appreciate seeing them.
Yeah, they're so lovely. Harvesting and processing. I think that's something that's really cool too. That's a bit unique in Haida Gwaii, especially with the meat and things that can be donated to the schools. That's a pretty unique program to have all the deer. Okay, I think it's time for some boat time. So I'll just see what, some questions come up. Shelly, I saw that you were answering some of them while the presentation was going. Sorry, my chat box seems to have disappeared. There we go. Okay, I'm just gonna start from the beginning here. So I was wondering what kind of buildings the pantries are in. We have some things in Kamloops that are like shared fridges, but they're not really accessible to schools. And it sounds like you were saying that, or I guess you could just give me your answer, Shelly, or do you want me to read what you have here?
Yeah, I bet I could sort of articulate it sort of quickly. So we have two different models. In the north end, our pantry is literally a shed right now that we keep trying to find money to upgrade. And it has 2 freezers and a fridge in it, and we just got an electrical panel in it. It also has a couple of our pressure canners, dehydrators, and canning jars. So that's how I kind of visualize our pantry. But that
so people can borrow the equipment.
So I think one of the things that I think of when I think of our work is that we don't necessarily work on a household individual level. We like to really focus on, and this is sort of like been the focus for the last 8 years. We like focusing on bringing increasing access to local and traditional food to food programs. So schools is our biggest hub to begin with, but there's lots of other food programs that exist, including hospitals, health centers, mental health groups, prenatal. So really trying to be that source of local food for people. And so we have in the past done some lending out for food processing, both in the north and the south of equipment. We've also been building the capacity to gather people in our facilities to deal the food that they need to dealt with. But I would say we tend to focus on like community workshops where we have a bunch of fish and we bring everyone together into a community space together, and then we process that fish together, and we have knowledge keepers that are teaching us how to cut the fish and can the fish. And so that north end pantry, we do have freezers that hold I think we had maybe 2,000 pounds of gao that we were holding and distributing that Sherry had a picture of. And then we just got about $5,000 worth of blueberries onto the island. We like to balance out BC large scale purchases as well as local. And I know Erica was just texting me saying, I have 100 local eggs. Where am I going to put them? And I'm like, okay, our pantry isn't big enough to hold that many for the week that we need to get it out in our food bank hamper next week. All that to be said is that we have a south end pantry as well. It's a building with 3-4 freezers in it and a small kitchen that we're trying to upgrade. But then we reach out from there to look at often we're putting things like all our gal right now is in one of our school freezers because that's a deep freeze that's available to us. So it's a lot of those partnerships. We have like small scale food pantries that could go next level. We were really close to buying a reefer truck so we could start like bumping up our production, because really we're slinging like large scale boxes of fish and deer. And so I think we're at a point where we're ready for a large hamper or a large reefer truck that could be our freezer. But right now we're not quite there. We have access to the freezers. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much for explaining the pantries a little bit more. So Heidi was wondering if the majority of the work was happening in the North End or Skidegate in the village of Queen Charlotte are also involved. It sounds like it's kind of all over.
Yeah. So our 2 pantries are located in Old Masset and Skidegate, and we have coordinators on both ends of the island. And then we serve, like the 2 coordinators serve all communities on island.
Awesome. Heidi was also wondering if during harvesting and working with elders and knowledge holders, are some of the traditional teachings and language being taught in conjunction?
Sherry, do you want
to? Well, being one of the newer participants on the team, I was really enjoying listening to Shelly's answers. But, this was Haida language being in conjunction with, and the knowledge keepers who are bringing that. That is absolutely one of the things that the Haida Foods Committee is amazing at doing. And when we do work with the school system, and when class is in session, there are Haida language teachers on staff, and we can bring questions to them and kind of work with them on different topics and ideas that we're working with. And if there is something that we're looking for a word for, I know that sometimes it's a bit of a challenge for them to go out and find it and see if there is something that is similar or akin to. But yes, it is absolutely one of the underlying goals is to connect through food and culture with the language as much as possible.
Awesome, thank you.
Was that helpful?
Yeah, that was great. So we have another question. Do you have any obstacles of having different communities work together? And if so, how did you overcome these obstacles and get something that is cohesive throughout Haida Nation and Island? Not just different communities, but different organizations as well. I can imagine you'd have a lot of different people that you deal with. So
totally, yeah. This is one that I'm going to start, and then I'm going to maybe ask Shelly to elaborate on, because I am super new. However, I had a fantastic orientation, and I have gone through all of the old files, looking through how different organizations kind of were brought in or formed over time. And one of the things that I also, learned in post-secondary and can see very clearly demonstrated here is that when you have common goals and you have parties interested in seeing the success of common goals happen, and it's one that easily has community buy-in, like ensuring that we have local food sources and systems in place. Not only should we need them, but also because it's a healthy and locally available option for us, then the buy-in from multiple groups and communities seems to roll along nicely and easily. But I will hand it over to Shelly to expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that question, because I do think that we've run into conflict and challenges over the decade, for sure. And I think, you know, if you think about all the different communities on the island and getting everyone on the same page, that's not an easy thing to do. And at the same time, it feels like food is the one place that it feels most uniting. I would say, like, I'm not going to pretend there hasn't been strife and conflict in our work, because there has over the years, and we've learned and as an organization, and we've made mistakes and we've run up against, you know, just different, like, conflict and different agendas. But I would say, like, overall, it's really that food is so uniting, and when it's talking about food and children, it's just such a uniting sort of cause. And I would say, like, just witnessing what's happened over the last 3 months during COVID-19, I would say that I've seen that even more. I was thinking about the word that I would use, which was a little bit galvanizing of relationships that have been a little bit distant, and they've really come together during this time of COVID for the purpose of strengthening food security. And I mean, as a grassroots organization, Local Food to School really doesn't, like, exist within a government agency right now. And so it's really been built on partnership and passion. And so the last thing I'll say is that having learning circles, so that role that Sherry holds now, is really that job of bringing community members together in the same room for a day. Like, our learning circles are a full day. We're often working on food together, and then we're really visiting these goals and visions for ourselves and the island. And that, when you create those goals and visions for an organization, I'm sure all of you have those, but it really helps with grant writing, and it really helps with aligning what we're all working together. And one of the most recent things we did with our learning circle goals was line them up against the community comprehensive plan. So the community's been engaged a number of times, and different communities have, like, community comprehensive plans. And we pulled out all the food language in them and saw where there was overlap. And now we're able to sort of move forward even deeper, embedded into community goals. So yeah, I would say this is the place where we've had a lot of success.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing those learnings. I think it's kind of nice working with food and kids, because nobody is ever really going to say no. Like, maybe they don't have capacity, but everybody's at least has some buy-in. But I think that's a really good point to, like, look at their own plans and say, well, you wanted to do this, so I can help you. You know, you're not adding something else to people's plates. You can kind of figure out how you can all work together for the same goal, and depending on whatever what lens they're coming at it from. Thank you. Ava has a question here. She's developing an education program around reducing food waste. Do you have any thoughts or advice on how to talk about the topic from an Indigenous perspective? I'm not sure if Sherry or Shelly would be better for this one.
Yeah, that's a super interesting question that I probably don't have enough experience to go off of yet, but I can share a waste scenario that is happening at our local high school here, the GTNS, Goodney School. So they're actually at a zero impact for waste in general for their current projects that they're working on, because they're going to be fueling a heat system inside the greenhouse, which will allow for a longer growing season, with a biofuel that they're making from recycled plastic. So they are going through this process of taking the plastic, turning it into a fuel that can then go into the heater, that can extend the growing season, and make other products that keep funding their program. So I unfortunately am not hitting all of the points of your question, because I don't know the Indigenous keys that can help do those teachings, but that is an interesting success, and we will look forward to hearing your successes with your waste management program that you're starting. But please, if Shelly has more, I would love to hear more, because that is a good question.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And I think what comes to my mind from the Haida Foods Committee is the idea of only take what you need, being one of the Haida laws. And it's something, so when we're out harvesting and we have a traditional knowledge keeper with us, and that is one of the guiding principles of our work, is to have youth work with elders, is the elders are teaching about taking only what you need. So that's a part, and giving thanks and taking what you need and using all parts of it. And so today when we were on a meeting, we were talking about the sockeye run down in Copper Bay, and how there's harvesting going on or fishing going on down there. And that's a limited, like sockeye are quite precious here, and we have low stocks this year. A lot of our rivers are closed. And so they're getting sort of distributed around to households for food security from the CHN. And that's just something that they're doing. But I heard one of the people in our meeting say, like, imagine bringing all the elders the fish heads, that would be so special. And so what I've learned over the years is that you use all aspects of the animal and the plant, and you're giving thanks and you're taking what you need. And I think those are some of the Indigenous teachings that have been shared with me through Jenny and Margaret over the years, that I see get passed down to the children working in the schools. And I know Erica is our pantry coordinator in the South, and she really takes that to heart and ends up making a lot of stock from the bones that we use with either a venison or a beef, our local beef. And so really we've had the hides from the deer transported into, or translated into drum hides, and antlers into rattles. So I think that there's just, like, when we look back at traditions that have been passed on, there's just such a rich sense of using all aspects, and there's no waste there. So
that's awesome. Well, there's no waste in nature. It seems like a kind of a natural thing. It's just hard to know what to do with everything. So sounds like there's a lot of knowledge that you've connected into. Claudia is wondering, how do you source food to the pantries? Is it by donation, or is there a separate budget for this?
This is something that I've been learning about. This is Sherry. There is both. It's mostly applied for, and it's mostly separate budgets, and it's mostly different programming that I've looked through the applications for funds for specifically stocking up those pantries, but there are some donations that come in as well. Now, for kind of the percentage of it, I might lean on Shelly if you have a better idea of that. The donations part, I don't have a whole lot of data on.
Yeah, so one of the things that's important for us is that we need to follow, there's sort of different guidelines we have to follow in the pantry, the wildlife rules, as well as commercial and fishing, DFO, the Department of Fisheries. And so we do have to be careful about what we buy and what is legal to buy, and we follow a lot of food safety plans. And so there's a lot of legislation that sometimes are actually the prohibitive, or restrictive aspect of building up a traditional food system. But I would say that we consider all the venison in our program all donated, because we don't buy venison, we get it donated. But we have found ways to, support hunters to go out for mileage, and so we give them gas money or mileage time. And then fish is another thing. Like, if we're not dealing with a commercial fisherman or a CFIA processing plant, so a lot of the food or fish has to be a donation, and that has to be something that we track. So when we're dealing with those sort of more wildlife and ocean fisheries, restricted areas, we do have to work with donations. And then I would say that there's a whole other aspect of, like, we know probably everyone on this call knows that local food ends up being often more expensive than food that's subsidized and available in the grocery store or through GF. And JNF's like a big distributor, and so often we're looking at grants like Breakfast Club of Canada or Maison Canada. We're looking at these different ways of like supplementing the school's food budget so they can be buying local, and that's always been a challenge for us that we still haven't figured out in its completion. But sometimes we can bring the angle that if there's donated protein in the program, and then it can compensate for the higher cost of locally grown berries and or produce.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I just want to be cognizant of time and make sure that we finish on time. Heidi has a lovely message for you. I don't know how to pronounce. Thank you. Close enough, maybe, for your work and time. And she's wondering if there are elders in need of anything that we might be able to share from our programs in the Lower Mainland. So something to think about. So I'm just going to close the chat right now. If you'd like to learn more about the Haida Gwaii program, their Facebook page is super active. So you can go on the local food to school Haida Gwaii. This is just a screenshot of it. And there's lots of resources and information being shared on the Facebook page. And then there was a generic email, right? Sherry and Shelly, that might be shared. So we can share that out.
There is, and I think at this point, the Facebook page is a really good place to connect. There's a lot of content there, and we'll make sure the email address is up there too.
Okay, perfect. So you can send messages and anything on Facebook and connect with either of you if there's any questions. Awesome. Well, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you so much, both of you. I learned a lot. I'm always so inspired after these webinars. It's so fabulous. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you both taking the time to share your knowledge with us. And just a reminder, the recording, we'll put it up on YouTube when we're finished here, and everyone will have access to the slides and the recording. So our next webinar is next week. We have 2 more. We're hearing from Dr. Tamara Soma from SFU, and it's talking about the global food apocalypse, kind of a zombie themed one, and it's from 3:30 to 4:30 next week, and how leaders and youth can prepare for the apocalypse and hopefully avoid it. As always, you can stay in touch with us through our website, sign up for regional listservs we have from our hubs around the province, and our newsletter, as well as our social media. So we've been posting lots more on our Facebook lately, and have lots of resources. So thank you everybody again. I'm just going to end the meeting here so we don't go too much over time. So thank you everyone so much, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.